over here. Hadouken! Hadouken! That's the tappy tappy.
Hey guys, Rob here with McDojoLife, and the man you just got done watching making video game sounds
Hadouken!
goes by the name of Francis Serrano, but most people know him online as the Tappy Tappy guy because of this video.
You need to be able to do those, right? Because eventually, catch, right? Strike. Boom. Hadouken! That's the tappy tappy, right? Strike me at number 2. Boom, 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 bam, bam, right? That's all what the tappy tappy does. If there's anything I want you guys to eventually learn when I get back, is that the tappy tappy. But we got to get this abecedario first. So strike, boom, here, here, here. If you notice, I'm doing that now. So it's easy with his arm because he's got a target for me, right? Yes? Sir. That's what we're going to be working on, okay?
Francis has gotten a lot of heat from people online. Oh, and I mean like a lot. So I figured because there are so many videos roasting this man online, rather than trying to just add to that's already out there that anyone can see, why not try this a little differently? So I decided to actually reach out to Francis and see if he would be down for an interview. And he actually agreed. Have a listen.
My name is Francis Thomas B. Serrano. I'm the owner and chief instructor of Filipino Martial Arts School. I was a part of another organization called Visayan Legacy Eskrima. My very first Filipino martial arts teacher is then Guru, but now Master Henry Cabillion. Then after a few years, he asked me to join his instructor, Chief Joe Napiel. And then at the same time, I met Master John Garcia and Master Ariel Gonzalez. Unfortunately, in 2004, Chief Joe passed away. So we kind of consolidated under his older brother, Master Chief Sonny Napiel. I am, and the Visayan Legacy Eskrima is mostly derived from the Doce Pares multi-style system. I also trained under Guru Jomar Obejas of Rapido Relissimo Cali. I also trained with Cali de Leon with Guru Roland Isla, as well as Marqueda Cali with Kuya Doug Marqueda himself. And I did train with Fred Master and Cliff Odette in MDS, just a smidget. And I'm also a certified instructor under Supreme Grandmaster Percival Val Pableo of Armor Fighting Concept.
Very cool. And how long would you say your total training time has been?
28 years.
28 years. I get that. I started when I was 12 years old. On my birthday was my first martial arts class. So now April 12th will mark 29 years. So
there you
about
go.
the same time. That's cool. And you have a legitimate pedigree in the Filipino martial arts, which is great. While we were off screen, I already told you that I had an opportunity to train with guys like Rick Tucci, Paul Vunak, and Guru Dan. They would come to our studio in Jacksonville when I was a kid often, and we would have seminars and stuff. And that's a lot of our stick fighting Filipino martial arts stuff that we were learning at the time in the school I came up through was through them, which was great.
Very nice.
And anybody who's ever trained with Guru Dan knows that he's going to give you about 100,000 things to work on. So you better take notes. So I want to kind of talk to you.
I have students that tell me, "Can you write that down?" No, I know it. Why do I need to write it down?
You write it down. You're paying me to tell you. You write it down. I wanted to do this interview because a lot of the stuff that I've seen you do is Filipino martial arts stuff. That's what that looks like. And so
I'm only qualified to teach Filipino martial arts.
Yeah, which a lot of times what winds up happening, I think, online, and there's going to be things that any martial artist is going to disagree with, even within the same style, or there's going to be things that people disagree with from art to art. I think what wound up happening was I was getting sent your video. I think I've definitely had it sent to me thousands of times. And I mean, various videos. Obviously, the tappy tappy one is the one that
Yes.
most people know you by,
Yes.
which you own. You go by Chief Tappy Tappy, which I think is great,
Thank you.
very tongue in cheek. And I think what winds up happening is rather than people genuinely coming to the table with honest questions
Mm-hmm.
from a place of understanding or learning,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people were coming to the table from a place of ignorance and disrespect. I
Mm-hmm.
think in my profession, there is a time and a place for disrespect. I don't have any respect for people who do not earn it. I do
Mm-hmm.
not have respect for people who sexually abuse children. I do
Oh,
not have respect for anybody who financially defrauds people and all of the five rules that I talk about.
absolutely.
I don't deviate from those.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the rules. They have nothing to do with me. They have everything to do with honesty, integrity in the industry.
Also
And
being a
it's,
good person.
yeah, like just being a decent human being. And I think being honest with students is an incredibly important thing to do. I do think that we will probably have some different viewpoints on
Mhm.
application and things like that, but we might not. And I
Right.
thought that it was so important to just have a conversation and dialogue with you
I appreciate it.
because I think also you're put in this odd position where you're constantly being attacked.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to start this off, just to get this out of the way,
Sure.
I do believe most people are attacking you, not necessarily because of your martial art, but specifically because of your weight. You
Correct.
feel that that is correct.
Correct. Yes. And I can only hypothesize as to why many people don't like that. My running theory is that when you see martial artists in the movies such as Bruce Lee, Michael J. White, Scott Adkins, great physical shape, obviously, and they worked hard for it. They earned every accolade that they get for that. But when other people see that, they're thinking, "Oh, I can never look like that, so I'll never do martial arts." And then I come, and then Chief Big Boy Screamador, Chief Tappy Tappy comes out of nowhere, and then he is not doesn't look like Bruce Lee, Scott Adkins, or Michael J. White. And then what ends up happening is now they're in a fork in the road, whether they can either accept the fact that maybe they were wrong, that they probably could have done martial arts at the very beginning, or if they can't accept that, then the automatic logical conclusion would be he must be a fraud because he doesn't look like those guys. Um, and I'm just breaking that norm, I guess, or that social construct that everybody has to look like a certain thing to be a martial artist. Now, I can't speak for any other art. I can only speak for Filipino martial arts, and Filipino martial arts is capable for any body type. Anybody can do FMA. And I know a lot of my fellow brothers and sisters in other martial arts will say the same thing about their art, and I agree with them. But I can't obviously speak because I'm not an authority with to those things. But I can only speak for Filipino martial arts that FMA comes in all sizes and in all ages and in all forms. And what we look for as a teacher is somebody dedicated, somebody that's willing to really put in the work. And yeah, I'm never going to look like those guys. I've accepted that about myself. And but I still consider myself a Filipino martial artist? Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
For sure. When it comes to adding to that, because I think it's an important conversation.
Hmm.
Um, there are people who were having conversations, and I don't think all of them were coming from a place of hate. I do think that certain people were coming just to be assholes. I know the difference for sure.
Of course.
As somebody born with a cleft lip and palate, I understand what it's like to be judged just based solely upon looks. I don't think that that's fair to do of anyone. I
Hmm.
do think that there is a conversation to be had. One person specifically was talking about mind, body, and spirit. And they
Hmm.
said that for them, martial arts is about harness or making sure that those things are built together, your mind, your body, and your spirit. And while people do have this specific body type expectation of like someone who might be a fitness instructor, obviously your job is not a fitness instructor, your job is a Filipino martial arts instructor. Do you feel that, and again, this is not meant to be disrespectful at all, it's an open dialogue.
Yes.
Do you feel like there is some validity to being in a better shape in order to help your students better?
So isn't that true for everything that we do? Isn't that even if you were, a gardener or anything, shouldn't we all be healthier? But everybody's health journey is different. Now, I'm not going to lie, I've always been morbidly obese. I've always been a big person. And when I started Filipino martial arts, I was already a big person. And as the years gone by, I did find myself struggling a little, a little bit to a lot to doing anything. But during the pandemic, I made a conscious decision. Now, this is, of course, almost, 2 decades of doing FMA at this point when I decided to do this. I decided to start getting healthier. Whatever reason why I started at 2020, I don't know. I mean, I did get the gastric bypass surgery. I was on National Geographic when they did that. Did it work? Obviously, it did not. Right? There's undeniable. There's a lot of other factors that goes into that, but I'm not going to get into that too much. But bottom line here is I decided to go to do something in 2020. And because my friends, even my students who I consider my family, was saying, "Sir, you need to be the face of the school. You need to be that person that goes that showcases the organization and the style." So in 2020, I decided to start being better. I started cutting back on carbs. For example, for Filipinos, rice. Oh my gosh, right? I mean, we had to get a smaller rice cooker because I started eating a lot less rice. I cut off 90% of my rice intake. Now I can't go 100% because I'm still Filipino, but it's just enough to trick my brain to start to stop eating as much rice as possible. So I can honestly say that since then, I think I've lost over 175 pounds. Do I
That's
still have
awesome.
to go?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
obviously.
Hmm.
Do I still have, am I in my best shape? I'm better than I was 5 years ago. I'll say that much. And I'm still trying every single day. But at the end of the day, Rob, I'm not doing this for anybody else.
For sure.
Because
That brings me
because
to another question, and I hate to interrupt, but I think that it's a good question because I think that while I think a lot of people, when they ask questions online, some people make statements, and I think that there is no validity to what they're saying.
Mhm.
Some people make statements based off of a stereotype, and others, no one knows what happens when it's not on the screen. No one knows you. They don't know what's going on in your private life. They have nothing. They don't know any of that. And I did have a point where I got up to 230,
Mhm.
and that 230 for me was very heavy for my body type. And I was not healthy, and that was because I had a lot of factors going on in my life.
Of
I had some
course.
depression going on, which adds to that. And like I wasn't working as much as I should when it comes to my physicality and things like that. So I think most people respect the try.
Mhm.
They don't necessarily just respect the where you are, right? So it's
Correct.
always more impressive to people when they have like a turn, like
Correct.
this did happen. It wasn't good at that time. Maybe people were not respecting whoever it was, whether it be a
Correct.
celebrity who's on drugs. They don't respect the Robert Downey Jr. who's all heroined out. They respect the Robert Downey Jr. who is now not on drugs anymore. So if, and just tossing this out there, if I was able to get you a pro bono dietitian, a pro bono, uh, athlete coach, like a physical therapist coach who was able to help you with your morning routines and stuff like that. So somebody who would help you out with your workout routines in the morning for free, and somebody who was willing to help you out with your diet for free. Would that be something that you'd be interested in doing?
Yes, of course.
Awesome, awesome.
I mean,
Because
but
like I
like,
said, go
yeah,
ahead,
but
sorry.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
but
but like
how,
I said, my goal here was not to create some type of animosity or anything like
of
that.
course,
That
of course,
obviously is a question that I wanted to get out of the way. I don't want to harp on that and sit on here all day talking about that,
right.
but I wanted to get that done first because I think that people, at least in my mind, had you just said hell no,
Hmm.
I think people might have looked at you a lot differently than you just saying yes.
Oh yeah.
So I would love to be able to do that. And if that would be something you're up to, I'm sure that I could provide that. And I think that people might look and view your techniques in a specific way a lot differently while you're going through that journey.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of people online, by the way, who absolutely have respect for you. There are tons of comments about people who have nothing but the utmost respect for you. And the biggest thing that I noticed is that the people who had respect for you, they all just genuinely said that you're just a nice guy. And like, I deal with a lot of assholes, and it doesn't have to be that way. It can be nice and it can be beneficial, and we can help each other out. And I really think that's an important thing for the martial arts community to
Absolutely.
do. So I appreciate you at least taking that, and I will reach out to some people and I will make
I
that happen.
appreciate it. Thank you so much. I
Um,
appreciate
yeah, and now we can kind of get into the technique stuff.
that.
So when it comes to your Filipino martial arts, there were people who were asking, and I already know the answer to this, so I'm just going to let you take it away. There were
Sure.
people who were asking about, like, when do we get to see this applied? Now, some people were asking specifically about you applying it. When do we get to see you apply it? And then
Hmm.
some people were asking about students applying it.
Hmm.
Now, I personally have seen on your page application. So could you dig in and talk a little bit about like answers to those questions?
Yeah. So I think when people ask me, it's either one of two things. One, they ask me, can we see you apply this on the streets? And the truth of the matter is, when if and when somebody attacks me, I'm not going to set up my camera first. It's I'm going to defend myself first. I don't look forward to fighting anybody. It's not something that I'm gonna start a fight with somebody else because I don't want to go to prison or anything like that. So there's that. Secondly, people ask me, have I ever competed? And the answer is yes. Was I good? No. And I've openly admitted that to everybody. Was I ever a world champion? No. Was I ever a national champion? No. Was I ever a regional champion? No. I wasn't a very good fighter. I wasn't a very good competitor. If anything, I was below mediocre at best. And I've never claimed to be anything more than that as a competitor. Um, but if people want to see me sparring people, I know the most common, like somebody that's not your student. Yeah, there's videos of it. There's video of me sparring with Supreme Grandmaster Val Pobleo, and he's a multiple time world champion. I've trained with well, for example, Master Henry Cabillion. He's a 23-time world champion. And I've crossed sticks with him many times. Um, so if people, what people want is such a wide spectrum, but I just kind of boiled it down to those two categories that I just feel like there's nothing I could ever really do to satisfy people or everybody. Like what's that quote from Dr. From Abraham Lincoln? You can't make everybody happy all the time, right? So what I can do is I can only post what I have. I can't post things that I don't have, right? So if people don't think that what I do is legit, well, that's obviously their right, their choice to do. But there are those who do. So, I mean, as far as legitimacy is concerned, I know my stuff is legit. Have I used this to defend myself in real life situation? Yes, I have. And has my student used this in real life application? Yes, they have. But it's not something that hurting another human being, regardless of because they want to hurt me, it's not something I relish. It's not something that I'm like want to advertise to the whole wide world. But if people want to see that, well, sorry. I don't have any of those videos.
Yeah, someone in the comment sections as well, and I'm going through and I'm paraphrasing. I'll go through more specific stuff. I'm just trying to go through what I remembered. The reason I posted the video today was so that way I'd have these things fresh in my mind
I get it.
and I wouldn't have to write a bunch of shit down. So Um, but yeah, like someone was asking, like, okay, well, will you post stick knife and will you post like Hubud? And the first thing that I thought to myself was, did you even take a goddamn second to look at this man's page? Because Hubud is something that you talk about a lot. And anybody who's ever done Filipino martial arts, Hubud is a drill that you're going to do. It's just
Mhm.
a part of it, and it's an important drill, but it is a drill.
Yeah.
It is a drill. There is a lot of nuance to Hubud. There is a lot of subtleties. It is built up of a lot of techniques, even
Mhm.
in just like your standard race slap hit.
Mhm.
There's a lot going on in those drills.
Correct.
So I think maybe though One, before we get into Huba, because I think that's an important thing to talk about, because people who've never done Filipino martial arts are not going to understand what that is. But you talk a lot about like the tappy tappy, which is
Mhm.
why you're the chief tappy tappy guy. You talk a lot about video game references and things like that, like the get over here or the Hadouken and
Hadouken,
stuff
yeah,
like that. So could you explain to people like a little bit about why you explain things in those mannerisms? Because I
sure,
think that might also be a disconnect in why people might not give you the same respect as an instructor. Someone else said very specifically, and it was a very interesting way that they put it. They said, "How come I don't see you teach this with passion?" And I disagree. I think that you do it in your own way. I think it's just something that you do every day for a living, so you just do it. But I think that is your version of teaching with passion. From what I can see, is that you're having fun, you're enjoying it, and you're going through these motions. Could you explain to people a little bit about the tappy tappy? Could you
sure,
explain them a little
sure.
bit about who bud and explain to
Right.
the little bit about why you phrase things the way that you do?
So first of all, thank you. So it gave me a platform to finally explain this. The tappy tappy is not the entirety of my skill set. It's not the entirety of my art. It is Filipino martial arts, and the tappy tappy is a drill that is within the curriculum of Filipino martial arts. Now, the biggest thing for me as a Filipino martial arts instructor is for my students to understand and how to the thinking or the mindset of Filipino martial arts. Now, what was taught to me, Master Henry Cabillion is was born in the Philippines, grew up here. Chief Joe and Chief Sunny was not. Chief, Master John Garcia, he wasn't born in the Philippines. Master Ariel was. So I had a mixture of Filipino-born instructors and non-Filipino-born instructors. Then the majority of my students are non-Filipino-born or not even Filipino at all. So when things were being taught to me, it was from a Filipino cultural reference. When and that's how teachers do things. Like they want to make sure that the student understands in the language that they understand things, right? And so in my case, being born in the Philippines with a above average understanding of the Filipino cultures, being Filipino American, right? It was easy for them to do that for me. But for my students who are non-Filipinos and not even non-Filipino speak or not even non-Filipino Tagalog speaking students, I had to find a different reference. I had to find a different reference points for them to be able to understand. And I don't know of any martial artist that has never played Street Fighter, or I don't know of any martial artist that doesn't at least know the reference of Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat. And that was all me having fun with my students. It was just me making sure that they understand that any when I was doing the tapping that you can add anything you want to it, including the Hadouken, right, or including get over here, right, and those are just more of a pop cultural reference that non-Filipino speaking students can understand. And quite honestly, when I made that video, I wasn't thinking that it was going to blow up. I didn't think Chief Tappy Tappy was going to be born in that video. But I think the reason why it connected so well with everybody was because that was a reference that anybody can understand. Now, whether they agree with my connectivity to it is that's up for debate. But it was at least understood by everybody else. So as a teacher, if my student is not learning, then that's my fault. My job is to create a way for my students to understand the mindset and the technique of Filipino martial arts in a way that they can understand it best.
So is it safe to say, and I could be wrong, but is it safe to say that when you're saying references, that you're literally just saying the reference for the fun of the reference and
Mhm.
not actually teaching someone a Hadouken and to not actually trying to say that Mortal Kombat word for word is technique?
So let me just say this. If I could actually do the Hadouken, I would have students lining up around the building, right? It's just a fun reference because look at us laughing about it now. Students learn most easier when they're having a good time. And that's all it is. If I could really do the fireball, Jesus Christ, I'd be a multi-billionaire.
Yeah, it's what I've been preaching for years, man. Um, yeah, I think, I think when we're dealing with things like Filipino martial arts, for a lot of people who don't understand it, if they're coming from a background of a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu,
Hmm.
the equivalent in my mind is like doing solo floor drills. If I'm just shrimping and bridging and moving my body around on the
Right.
floor, taken out of context, it would just look like I'm kind of flopping around on the floor. But when you break those things down, there's application that you're learning within that. Am I just going to bridge? No, I'm not just going to bridge. There's going to be more to it than that, but I will drill it to get better at it. Am I just going to shrimp or ebby? Am I just going to do that? No, I'm not going to just do that, but that is the fundamental movement that I'm going to be doing. And there's a million and one ways to use that in application. Filipino martial arts is a lot of drilling. There was
Hmm.
a lot of drilling. And within those drills, if you just look at the drill by itself, will that actually work? No, I'm never, it's be the equivalent of doing a kata in the street. Am I
Hmm.
going to just bust out a kata in the middle of a street fight? Absolutely not. But that's why in karate you have things like bunkai, which is the application of the
Hmm.
technique. And so, one thing that was a criticism that people were saying, and I'd be curious your thoughts here,
Sure.
was that a lot of people were saying, well, the opponent would never just stand there. So, like for instance, somebody's swiping and then their arm stops.
Of
There's a
course.
lot of movement within there.
Of
Um,
course.
I do feel there's validity in what they're saying, but also I feel like there may be something missing, and I just want to give you an opportunity to talk about it.
I appreciate it. So let me be very clear. I do not believe they're just going to leave their arm there. I believe they're going to move their arm. I believe they're going to move their body as much as they can to try to hurt me or worse. I do believe that. But just like you said, we have to, as a teacher, I have to break things down into biteable sizes, chewable sizes, right? So obviously, when a person is leaving their arm there, I just want them to learn the motion. I just want him to learn the technique. I just want him to learn how to do it properly. And then when we increase the speed, when we increase the veracity of, then you can start seeing it applied to applied to more uh faster paced things. Now, the thing about it is that when I post videos of my guys competing, like not somebody from the same school, it's a complete different school competition. They don't necessarily see the tappy tappy, they don't necessarily see the hubat, but that is because, and I'm sorry to say, they just don't know how to look for it yet. And I think that it is valid that people say, what about his other arm? I don't disagree with about the other arm. But then as a fighter, I also understand body mechanics. That if I move away from the other arm, it's harder for that person to reach me. And I don't need 5 minutes. I just need 5/10 of a second to be able to do any more damage against my opponent. But again, as a teacher, my job is to teach in chewable sizes. And then in this case, yes, I do agree. The arm's not going to be left out there. But it is like you said, it's a drill, it's a step by step, and then when you put all of it together, it's moving really fast. Now, in some of the drills that we're doing, are they going to use it in every single time in a tournament? Probably not. But the whole idea is I want to give my students as many tools as they can so that if they need it, they have it. And then if they don't need to use it, then they don't need to use it. So, but I was actually just scouring through some of my videos last night just to show some just to show some of the stuff that I've been training with, and then my students using it in application. And I had to really slow down the video so people can actually see it. And that's coming out soon. I don't know exactly when, but that's coming out soon. But I'm hoping that if people, if because I've done it before, where I've shown people, okay, this is what I do, and here's how my students applying it. So,
So, one thing that I've noticed that you teach quite a bit in your classes is the Abaniko. And for people who might not be aware, it's pretty much just rolling your wrist. It's a
Mhm.
pretty standard thing, and there are people on all sides of the aisle in terms of how to apply this.
Mm.
Now, some people will use it very, very loosely. It's not going to be a technique they're going to touch on a lot. There are people who do the Abaniko almost like an attack, going straight ahead with it.
Mhm.
There are some people who do not do that whatsoever, and there's some people in Filipino martial arts who just speak out against it, period.
Correct.
So I'd be curious your thoughts because those criticisms, I think, have very interesting. I think that those criticisms in themselves are valid because those are coming from people who are actually trained in Filipino martial arts. There's already a spectrum of people who have thoughts on that technique by itself. A
Mhm.
lot of them do train. Like, for instance, a lot of the guys over at the Dog Brothers, they have stories in which they were speaking out against it. And some guys who go train over at the gathering, some people love it. Like, you see it a lot more in what I would consider sport eskrima or sport Filipino martial arts where everybody's geared up, and you do see a lot of that. That thing's
Right.
whipping around and everybody's doing it. So, what are your thoughts on the validity of that as a self-defense technique, as opposed to just a technique that you might drill for the sake of traditionalism?
So, great question. So let me say this: the Abanico, I think, has its place, and I think that when you are stick fighting and somebody is really close, or something what we call quarto range, it's an option. It's definitely an option, and I think that if hitting at the right spot can do some damage. I think that in many Filipino martial arts systems, we also have a spectrum of styles, obviously, right? And there's a group of people that are called long range fighters or largo fighters. As a long range fighter, they will most likely never ever use the abanico. And a a close range fighter will never do those elongated strikes that a long range fighter does. The system that I came from, the 12 Pares multi-style system of Supreme Grandmaster Diony Cañete, he came, 12 Pares is a combination or amalgamation of 24 different styles of Filipino martial arts. And all of them had some validity to it. They all have their own like war stories or success stories with it. Um, but for me, I don't, I teach the Abanico because it is part of the curriculum and it is part of the history. But do I see some application to it in beyond competition? No, I don't. I don't. But it's one of those things like, well, I'd rather have the skill and never need it, need it and not have it, because you never know. In a real life situation, you never know. You might need it. It might work, but in my opinion, what's the harm of learning it?
There's a great book. I always suggest this to anybody who's learning martial arts, period, but it's called Fightnomics.
Mm.
And Fightnomics is basically like Moneyball for MMA in a way. So what they did was they took
So I'm gonna
statistics.
Google it. I'm
Oh yeah,
keep.
it's a great book, but they took statistics from UFC 1 to 100. And after UFC 100 was done, they actually published this book, and that book was made up of like basically statistics on what was effective and what was not effective. And, there are certain techniques that are very highly effective. Everybody knows a rear naked choke is an extremely effective technique, even
Yep.
against somebody who does know martial arts, even against somebody who does know how to defend against a rear naked choke to the best of their ability. And that was the highest percentage chance technique to work. So if you
Mhm.
got into that position, you got your hooks in, and you were shooting for a rear naked choke, it had a 50% success rate from UFC 1 to 100. So that means every time someone would shoot for that neck to try to apply it, 50% of the time it worked, right? But that means 50% of the time it didn't work. And
Correct.
so they also showed that the effectiveness of like submissions went down greatly as the rounds went on, as the minutes went on and the seconds went on. Your odds of nailing a submission as rounds went on, actually, most of them dropped except for a triangle choke. It was the only submission in that finding study, anyway, where the chances of getting that submission went up. So, when it comes to the difference between teaching traditionalism and teaching reality, right? That's always going to be something that's always going to run a fine line of a gray area for any martial art because if I learned to go-go plata, what are the odds of me ever pulling that off? Like it's very low in MMA. Or if I learned, some fancy techniques, submission, some odds are going to be greater and some odds are going to be lower, but you still might learn them just to learn them. But
Right.
where the metal meets the road, or the rubber meets the road with any of those things, is application.
Right.
Application obviously happens during sparring. Now, people were asking online, and I had touched on this before, but I'm going to rephrase it in a different way so that way we can have a better handle on this, is that sparring in a tournament has very specific rule sets. Those specific rule sets you have to follow. You're probably not going to see a lot of double leg takedowns within that rule set in Filipino martial arts. They will be hitting a lot, but because they have padding, the odds of them actually just kind of going at each other like Rock'em Sock'em Robots happens a lot. You have a lot, some guys are long range fighters and they will go more defang the snake style where they're just backing up and cracking the hand and trying to get those little spots, leg, hand, and move around. So, what would sparring look like for your student base during class if you actually do that? And could you explain that a little bit to the audience who was asking about sparring?
Sure. So my school, it's part of our DNA to compete. It's always been a part of the DNA when I started, and it will be a part of the DNA till the day I take my last breath. Okay. Um, so in competition, the biggest thing that we get is, why do you guys wear so much armor, right? Well, I had a chance to speak to Grandmaster Cañete's son. Grandmaster Cañete was the one that designed the first iteration of the armors that we use now in competition. And he said that his dad designed it, right? To for you not to get any permanent body damage, but it is designed for you to get damaged, because he truly believed nothing teaches you respect of defense than getting hit really, really hard, right? And I use this analogy all the time with my students. Like, nobody, I can tell you that fire burns all day long, but until you get burned for the first time, you're not going to respect it, right? So that's that. Secondly, when it comes to in competition, yeah, we tend to really go at it. We've had people whose jaw was dislocated even with those helmets. We've had people. I personally have been had some dislocated ribs, fractured ribs because of it as well. People have had broken hands because of it as well. So it is still very dangerous. But at the end of the day, we still all have to go to work on Monday. I mean, imagine if you're a real estate agent and you're coming to work with a black eye. Nobody's going to buy a house from you. What if you are a surgeon or you're a concert pianist and your hand gets broken, right? You're not going to work. So I think the most important thing about that is competition is there to finally put to test what you've learned, what you've done, what you've been practicing, right? Is it a life and death situation? Absolutely not. And competition will never be a life and death situation, at least in my opinion. But it's the closest thing we have. It's the closest thing we have because that person in front of you wants to be a world champion and you're in his way. So he's going to use every skills that he has in his tool belt to get you out of his way. So and then you as my student or as a fighter, you have to use every tool in your tool belt to make sure that you win and you become the next world champion. So competition is a very, very important thing. And that's why I'm very proud to be the only school in the Inland Empire that has any world champions at all. And I have three. And then as of beginning of March, I have six national champions. And we're all preparing to go to Germany this coming August to compete at the GSBA World Championship.
So, what would sparring look like in one of your classes?
So yes, so in the philosophy that we have is that if you can fight exhausted, you can fight anytime. So the first things first is that I make sure that they're exhausted. They do jump ropes, they do kicking the shields, kicking the bag, hitting the punch, and then putting on the armor, hitting the punching bag. And then once they're all, exhausted, then we spar. And then what we do is, let's say right now I have 5 fighters that are in training. So one person will fight all 4 guys 2 rounds, and then we put another person in the middle, and then those guys will fight that. So we keep doing that and keep doing that. Now, obviously, in the beginning of, in between the cardio and the sparring, I want them to practice a specific technique, and so then that's when they'll do that. But then as we get closer and closer to the tournament itself, I stop teaching because there's only so much a person can absorb, and at that point it's just overloading them. So at that, so they will spar until they're ready to puke and fall down on the ground, and I tell them get the hell up and keep sparring. And so in my class, they'll be sparring with either a padded stick when they're just wearing minimal armor, which is just a helmet and gloves, or they'll go full on live stick fighting with the armor with a raw rattan stick, and then we'll either do single stick, double stick, and then if we're doing knife fighting, we will go back to minimal armor. We'll do knife fighting there, as well as padded sticks as well.
When it comes to criticisms you receive online, we
I get
obviously that's why we're
yeah
having the obviously we're having the conversation because there are criticisms
yes
online. And like anyone, if someone was to film me and I put stuff online, eventually there's going to be stuff on there people don't like, right? I do nunchuck stuff, and when I post that, people are like, "That's ridiculous." Well, of course it's ridiculous because I would never have a nunchuck in real life because that would be a weird thing to have on me. But
correct.
it's fun. I do it because I like it, and um, I understand that there are criticisms and at least how I handle criticisms is if I get one or two people to criticize me about something that I can control,
Hmm.
not my looks and shit like that, but something I can control,
Hmm.
I actually will take the time to listen to what they have to say. Because if
Hmm.
more than one person is telling me something similar, I have to at least at one point, to be fair to the conversation, to be fair to myself, go, there's a possibility I could be wrong.
Right.
And if I'm wrong, how can I improve and how can I get better? Now, at the end of me observing and like taking that in and trying to work through that process, I might still be like I'm still going to do it the way I do it. Like that's just
Right.
how I feel. But I also could be wrong.
Hmm.
When it comes to criticisms of you, have you ever heard of a criticism in which you were of the mind that the person criticizing you, whether they were being mean or whether they were just being polite in their criticisms, was correct? Has that ever happened?
Many times, many times. One that come off right off the top of my head was this guy named Paulo Rubio, GN Funker Tactical, right? He pointed out that in one of my class sessions I pulled a live blade, and he's like, "That's so dangerous. You never know." And when people started, I was inundated in the morning about that because Paulo posted it. I'm like, he's right. He's absolutely right. That was extremely dangerous. That was extremely stupid of me. And that was me showing off, right? That was me showing off saying, oh, I've been doing this for 28 years. I know what I'm doing. But you never know. I think that was his point. And so I went on his page and I said, Mr. Rubio is 100% correct. And I've taken steps to make sure that this doesn't happen again. I have given my students, they always had it, but just to verbalize it, permission to question anybody who walks in the door. Are you carrying a live blade? Right. And because sometimes we forget. Sometimes we're in a rush and everything. You're like, oh, I forgot I had that. Right. So, but yes, I mean, just to name a few, right? But then when I mean, if the criticism comes from somebody who I know has a Filipino martial arts background, I will actually reach out to that person. Like, okay, can you tell me how to be better at it? Like Kuya Doug Marcaida, for example, has called me many times. Say, hey, Francis, maybe not do this, but do this. My teachers call me all the time and say, mm. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Because I'm imperfect, right? I'm imperfect. So yes, no, if the criticism is genuine, and I think I'm pretty good at 98% of determining that, right? I will definitely listen. I will definitely listen. What makes it really hard, Rob, and I'm sure you understand this better than most, is that the way to protect myself, my emotional state, is that I stop reading the comments because there's 98% of them are so vile and so hateful that the only way to protect myself is to just not read any of them. So now I miss the comments that are helpful, that are coming from a very good place in their heart. And but how do I navigate through that? How do I differentiate between that over the other? And but I am very open to constructive criticism if it's coming from a good place. Now, if their criticism is because I'm a big person, right? I lost 175 pounds. I mean, how much more? I mean, what's too much weight to lose? Like I said, I wholeheartedly accept your gracious gift. Obviously, but at the end of the day, I'm still going to do it for me,
Mhm.
not for anybody else, not even for people on the internet. Because guess what? The people not everybody on the internet is still going to be never going to be satisfied. So yeah, I am open to open criticism. But most of the time, people who have a criticism that's coming from a good place already know how to reach me. I don't know if Keanu Reeves or was I don't know who said this, but he said that if you believe that if you want to criticize something I'm doing, then message me, text me, call me, right? If you don't have my number, it's because I don't care what you think. Your opinion doesn't matter to me. But if you have my number, then that means your opinion really matters to me. So I'm not saying I'm not the online criticism are 100% evil, 100% all bad because it's not, right? Some of them are genuine. Some of them are just like, Francis, I don't know if that's a good idea. Just like I was when before we started, I was saying that somebody contacted me right before we started, don't go on McDojoLife, man. They're gonna come get you. And so I'm like, no, thank you. I appreciate it. I don't even know who that person is. But they messaged me and I appreciate it. But I'm like, no, I've talked to a lot of people that knows him and I've seen his interview and he seems like a fair person. And that's all I could really ask for. So
For sure. And I appreciate you taking the time. It means a lot that you would trust me with this conversation because I know, you know, I know the effect that I have on people when I reach out to them, and I know that it could be stressful. So hopefully you feel comfortable in this interview, and
I do.
hopefully we're chill. And
Yeah.
you know I think that when it comes to my next question, which actually has directly to do with what you were just saying, uh, one thing I think people forget, and I think it's easy for us to forget, if we do have some type of an online presence, and by presence, I mean we're not talking like a few thousand people. We're
Mhm.
talking hundreds of thousands of people. I mean, McDojoLife now is creeping up on almost 2 million people.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's a lot of work, but
Yeah. No, I
it's
know.
easy. It's easy for us to forget that there are more people who are liking what you do than not liking what you do. It is very easy to fall into that trap. I know that it's in my head. I know it's psychological. I know that it's not true.
Right.
But what winds up happening is, I think in our day-to-day lives, we have so many people who actually genuinely care and love
Mhm.
us as a person that when you go online, the criticisms stand out so much more.
Right.
We're not used to that in our day-to-day lives. That's
Sure.
not normal standard living. And so I think that people who are online and they do want to give in their 2 cents, they are allowed to do that. It is a
Of
public
course.
platform. They are allowed to do
Of
that.
course.
But I do not think that they understand because they themselves are not put up on that platform.
Yeah.
Now, there are people out there who will say, well, this is what you asked for. Absolutely not. Nobody that I know of was like, I cannot wait to hear Steve Loves Magnolias 25 from Wisconsin tell me
Right.
all about, with a private profile and no profile picture and all the anonymity in the world, all about me.
Hmm.
No one asked for that. No one ever asked for that. That's not what you're doing this for. Most of us are trying to provide something to this world in a positive way. Even the
Right.
assholes, usually 9 times out of 10 in their day-to-day life, they're not walking around doing that to people. They're doing this because they're getting something off their chest.
Right.
So I am curious because I do think, on one hand, I do think that there are people out there who have legitimate criticisms, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that you are humble enough of a human being from what I've seen. I do a lot of research before I do these things. A lot. I mean, shit. If you posted it, I probably watched it. And if there's interviews out there, I probably watched it. So, like, when it comes to stuff like that, I do a lot of research. So, what is something that helps you cope with people being so negative? Because again, if it was just people harping on your technique, that would be different,
Yes.
right? But in a second, after this next question, after this, I'm actually going to go through some of these and we're going to talk about this
Sure.
because I think some of what they're asking is valid and good questions.
Correct.
I would say 90%, 90 at least, were just people being assholes.
Yeah.
So like how do you cope with that? What's a method for you? Because like I said, my method is pretty simple. I just remember like when I look at the likes versus negative comments, if
Correct.
there's 15, 20 negative comments and there's 2,000, 4,000, 10,000 likes,
Yeah, exactly.
clearly there's more people who like what I do. They're just not taking the time to be a dick. So like,
Exactly.
how do you cope?
So, when I started getting some sort of online popularity, um, I started working with my therapist on this one. And my therapist, she gave me this wonderful tool. And Luciana, if you can hear this, thank you. Um, she gave me this wonderful tool that says, okay, Francis, you can't control what people comment, but you can control everything else. You can control when you see it. You can control where you see it and what time you see it as well. So pick a day, pick a day, pick a place where you feel most powerful. Not your bedroom, because that's where you feel most relaxed. Some place where you feel most powerful, and then a time where you feel most, strength. And then that's when you look at the comments. And I'll be the first one to say, I never did that. But just to knowing that I'm capable of doing that really meant a lot to me. The second person that really helped me is Kuya Doug Marqueda. Kuya Doug, he's got millions of followers and, hundreds of thousands of comments, and he gets a lot of negative comments as well. This is just this is the cost of doing online business, right? But he tells me, it is your opportunity to shine the light on those people living in the darkness, right? This is your opportunity to educate people, right? And lastly, right, and then he always said you can always block them anyway, right? So, and lastly, and this is again just something that Kuya Doug helped me prepare myself to, was that out of the tsunami of minutia comments that I get, I'll get one comment that says, "I'm I'm overweight and I've been shamed to not do anything anymore. But you give me hope. You give me you inspire me to do something more." And it doesn't even have to, I mean, I'm hoping that the person who watches this who feels like they've been ostracized by their community, by society, from preventing them from doing the things that they want to do, but because they don't physically look like that they're supposed to be doing that. I'm hoping that this will inspire them to go ahead and do it. It doesn't even have to be martial arts. It doesn't even have to be film. It could be, underwater basket weaving. If that's what you want to do, by all means, go do it. So even though it hurts, right? And then I've taken steps to be better at it, right? It's I do it for that one person, for that one individual who finds this to be inspirational and gives them the courage to finally go do what they want to do, regardless of what they look like. That's what really keeps me moving forward.
So last one, and then I'm going to go through these comments,
Sure.
and then I'll see which ones. There was a few I actually saved today. I screenshotted them. I was like, oh, that's actually pretty decent. Let's see what he has to say about that. Those are pretty good. Um, for for people out there who might not necessarily know what it is that you do,
Mhm.
right, or know you at all, like there's a good chance, right? I get sent a lot of your videos, so most people who are watching this probably are at least a little aware of you.
Right.
What would you say the first like, oh shit, like this is actually kind of taken off and people really know who I am right now. Whether it was good, bad, and different, what was the first time? Could you describe the video a little bit and like what the response was?
Um, wow, I look arrogant right now. Like, oh, I have so many. I can't tell. No, no, it's not that at all. It's not that at all. Um, I would say it would have to be the Tappy Tappy Hadouken video. I wasn't Chief Tappy Tappy yet then, you know. But when I it started blowing up, right? I had friends who actually would, you know, they other Filipino martial arts, like my classmate, his name is Kim, and he's based in Oxnard, California. He went out to drinks with his coworker, and his coworker, dude, you still do Filipino martial arts? And he's like, yeah, dude, there's this guy, and he plays. He goes, that's my classmate. That's Francis, right? So that's one. But I think I mean, when my student, the one that was in the video with me, he's like, people are coming up to me and saying, "Oh my, oh, okay." Um, but yeah, I think that's when it started really happening, and I think I would say the pinnacle is that not to get into super details, Kuya Doug was asked to be somewhere, and you know, they were offering him they were asking him to do some sort of partnership with him, right? And then they said, oh, Doug, you got to watch this video, right? And Doug was describing this to me, and he goes, and then he goes, do you know this guy? And I'm like, oh, for the first time somebody asked if you knew me, not the other way around. That's wow. That's wild,
That's
right?
cool.
That's wild, right? And then they said, you got to watch this video, man. This guy's ridiculous." And they played the Tappy Tappy video, and Doug goes, "Yeah, that's my brother." And I can only imagine their face going, "Oh." It's like, you know, that's what I do. He's doing what I do. So I think that for me, I think to answer your question, when somebody asked Doug if he knew me, I'm like, oh wow, the tables have turned a little bit, right? Just 99.9% of the time. Do you know Doug? Right? And I'm like, yes, I do know Doug. He's my big brother. He cares for me and loves me more than I ever deserve. And so, but like when somebody asks him, do you know him? I'm like, whoa, that's different. So I think that would be that moment for me.
Well, that's cool, man. It's always nice to have those like those moments. Most people will never understand what that feels like,
Right.
where you're just existing, and then you exist now in a way that people you've never even thought knew you existed now are bringing you into the fold of a conversation you will never
Right.
hear over and over and over again. I want to touch on a few of these
Sure.
questions that I was asked. Money Team Palsy. Funny enough, this is the one of the last questions I was asked, and they wanted to know me what made me go with this approach. And I think that it's important for you to hear why. And I think it's important for me to answer this question because typically this is not my standard.
Right. That's what I'm going to ask you for a copy of, or some videos of them. Like,
Yeah, of course.
I haven't.
My standard approach for anything where people are giving criticisms in the martial arts industry is one or twofold.
Mm-hmm.
Either one, I just say that's what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that looks like. People will send me Taekwondo. I go, that's what that looks like. People will
Yeah.
send me Wing Chun Kung Fu. That's what that is what that is. So what do you want me to do with that? Because I have five very specific rules. And this is why I wanted to do it this way. All right.
Thank
So I'm going to ask you the five rules
you.
and
Mm-hmm.
you tell me if you fall into these categories or not.
Okay.
All right. Have you ever sexually molested a student?
No.
So you don't fall into that category. Have you ever been busted or caught for financially defrauding someone?
No.
Have you ever lied about your belt rank or your fight record?
No.
Do you believe you have supernatural abilities?
No.
And then the last one is shit. I know the goddamn rules. Motherfucker. All right, so belt rank. Oh yeah. Have you ever purposely harmed a student physically?
No.
So you don't fall into the five rules of what I do. Now,
Right.
I will say this. I do think that there's a gray area in terms of technique and effectiveness.
Mhm.
We did spend a lot of time on that. People are going to have their opinions one way
Right.
or another about what is and what is not effective. that will be based on their individual education of that art. If I had to grade different martial arts and what I find to be more effective or less effective based on a street self-defense, there
Mhm.
are a hierarchy. There is a hierarchy, right? But Filipino martial arts is typically based around weapons. It's based around understanding weapons. And when I was learning from Paul Vunak, for instance, I one of the questions that came up was why are we working on sticks first, and
Correct.
why not hand to hand first?
Correct.
His answer to us as students, to the best of my paraphrase for Paul, was that if you learned how to use sticks and proper stick drills, it happens real fast
Hmm.
and it's going real fast. And he said that by the time you take those sticks and you put them down,
Hmm.
and then you actually start working on your hand to hand, everything seems to feel a little slower.
Hmm.
Everything's slowed down in your mind. So even though you're still moving at full speed, you're not moving as fast as you would with like a stick drill. So your mind is at ease a little bit. And
Hmm.
so the reason I wanted to approach this the way that I am approaching it now is because I'm not coming at this from a novice standpoint. I have trained in Filipino martial arts. I do know what those things look like.
Right.
I have not seen a lot of stuff that you have taught in which I am like, yeah, I haven't seen any other instructor do it that way.
Hmm.
It's pretty standard. It's just Filipino martial arts and people might not necessarily know that. So I wanted to give an opportunity for you to speak your mind
Sure.
and talk about what most people would see on the outside
Hmm.
and then you to open up that door and show them what's going on a little bit behind the scenes that they might not know. So that's why I wanted to go with this approach because to me, you have not violated, to my knowledge, any of those five things. Now, if I thought that you molested somebody, if I thought you financially defrauded somebody, if I thought you were lying about your belt rank fight record, if I thought you did any of those five rules, this conversation would be a much different conversation.
Obviously, obviously. And knowing
So,
your five rules because you had that conversation with Strip Mall Sensei,
yeah.
I would have not, would have said, yes, let's go ahead and talk. Right. I would have been a little bit more hesitant. I would have probably blocked you.
Yeah, and like I'm nothing but fair with stuff like this, right?
Like
So
I said, I always thought you were fair, especially when I saw that interview.
yeah, and then obviously people are saying, one question is, would you do a live demonstration with Sean Strickland? Someone else asked him to enter an MMA match with Brock Lesnar. I don't think I've ever heard you say that you were an MMA fighter in any way, shape, or form. And I don't think that you've ever even claimed to have some sort of a fight record that I
No.
am missing.
So let me clarify something. I started using software called Opus Clips, right? And I mean that thing is amazing. That saved me 90% of all the stuff. And as a social media content creator, how much work that really takes, right? To not just film, edit, and then post. It's like really three separate jobs, right? When Opus Clips came up, I just uploaded it and I'm like, oh, this is so much easy. Schedule all, right? There was I think one video that said MMA, but I never said MMA, right? But somehow the algorithm or the AI reached that. But I have no mixed martial arts records whatsoever. I have never done MMA. I've never done anything close to MMA. Now, people have always asked me, what if you fight John Jones? Would you think you would win? Heck no. No, John Jones will hand me, here's your ass, Francis. Right? I because he does that, in tip top shape for a living, and then but if we were to fight his style of fighting, absolutely. If we were to fight my style of fighting, do I have a better chance? Yes. Right? Because I'm of course more adept. Now, am I saying can John Jones I can beat up John Jones in FMA? No. What I am just saying is that how many John Jones are there? Right? And if I run into him, can I get your autograph? Can I take a selfie with you? You want to punch me? Great. Can I take a photo where you punch me? So yeah, I have no MMA background. I've never competed in MMA. I've never competed in any sort of professional fighting. It's always been all amateur.
Somebody actually asked, they said, how has your life changed since being featured on National Geographic?
Without getting into details, not much. Not much because it did not do what I thought it was going to do for me. And I will admit that I thought that just if after the surgery, I don't need to change my lifestyle. I was clearly wrong on that one. I was clearly now there's other mitigating circumstances that I'm not allowed to get into, but obviously it did not go as well as it can. But there was at one point, and this was like 2008, where I moved back to the Philippines, and this was right after the surgery, like when I fully healed and everything, that I was able to really like live in the Philippines, meaning I didn't have a car, so I had to use Chevrolets everywhere I needed to go, right? And if I don't think if I didn't lose that 60 pounds after the surgery, I think me living in the Philippines would have been completely different scenario. And so I do thank God for the opportunity to get that. And again, just like the same reason, I'm just hoping to give somebody uh to inspire them to maybe to better their life. And when you see all these surgeries of the gastric bypass surgery, and these documentaries, they always find somebody who lives as a hermit type of thing because they've been ostracized. Well, when the producers approached my doctor, they didn't approach me, they approached the doctor. They wanted to find somebody like that. Well, the nurses of that doctor, no, you got to give it Francis, right? Because I flirt with the nurses all the time, right? They're pretty hot. So oh yeah, we go with Francis, and then so they met with me, and it's like, dude, we love your energy. We love that you're living life now. And I'm like, and that when I decided to do the surgery, it wasn't so that I can start my life, so that I can continue living my life as healthy in a healthier possible way. So yeah, I think it did change me, but it didn't last because I didn't do my part of it.
Um, Another question I got on here was what inspired him to make videos and who is his target audience? Much respect to him.
Well, thank you
By the
for
way, just in case anybody's listening to this and going, well, why aren't you reading the negatives? I'll read one if I find that it actually applies in a way that's conductive to a good question. I touched on, I shit you not, almost every negative thing already. We touched on the sparring. We touched on application in the street. We touched on weight. We touched on pretty much everything that is just amalgamated in these comment sections. Now, some people are polite in here and some people are rude, but I am not ignoring any of that. There's almost, I'd say one third of these questions is about street fighting and application. We just talked about that.
right,
I'd say the majority of these are about weight, and there are people in here who are asking legitimate questions. So
right.
I have not in any way, shape, or form tossed you any softballs. I was just much more polite about asking than these.
Obviously, yes.
So, but yeah, so back to it. What inspired him to make videos and who is his target audience? Much.
Well, so when I wanted to learn Filipino martial arts, this was in 1997, right? There was no YouTube, there was no Google, right? There's no Yelp, right? The only research I could do was the Dewey Decimal System in the library, right? And then when it was time for me to find a school, there was one across the street from where my dad was buried. So I remembered walking into that school and I said, "Sir, I really want to learn FMA and da da da, and I'm prepared to dedicate my life to this." And he goes, "Yeah, I only teach Filipino martial arts to my Taekwondo black belts." And none of my research said that I was required to do those things. Okay. So, I left disappointed, left brokenhearted, and then finally two of my friends who were dating at the time but they're married now, they saw the sticks in my closet and they started twirling and I'm like, "Oh my God, right?" It was undoubted. And I begged them to introduce me to their teacher, and and then they finally introduced me to then Guru but Master Henry Kabilian. But between those two moments, I was in New York. My cousins brought me there, and we went to Chinatown, and we bought these. There was this martial arts supply store, and they had a video, a VHS. That's how old I am. Of Professor Remy Presta's volumes 3 and volumes 5. They didn't have 1, 2, and 4. I don't know why they ran out of those first. And I don't know if there was a volume 6, 7, 8, and onward. All they had was volumes 3 and volumes 5. And I remember buying those videos, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna start my FMA journey. And I popped in volume three, and it's, oh, today we're going to be doing this and that and this and that and that and this. And I'm like, I don't know what this and that and that and this is, right? Maybe that was covered in the first two volumes, right? So then maybe I thought maybe if volume five was the last video that he's gonna put things together. So I placed that, and now we're gonna put everything that we learned together. And I'm like, oh, I don't have it. I only have volumes three and volumes five. I say that because the inaccessibility of Filipino martial arts was frustrating. It was frustrating. And unfortunately, a lot of my colleagues, even my teachers, are like, no, 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 we don't post things online. We don't post things online. And I said, well, how do we expect people to know about it? How do we expect people to understand it? How do we expect people to sign up for it if we're gonna be a very xenophobic, closed-minded community? We have to open things up, right? So, and then on the equal hand, it's like I said earlier, if this video inspires somebody who was ostracized because of their body for whatever reason, right, is inspired to finally do something that they want to do, then I win. I win, and that to me is my target audience.
Yeah, I will ask about this, and this is just my question. We had already touched on it before. Do you feel that your audience or your students might be more inspired if you were able to get down and do get into a better shape? Do you feel like that would be a positive for them? Because we do talk about body positivity a lot, and I appreciate that. I don't think there's anything wrong with going, I'm good. I'm good with who I am as a person. I am good as a human being. I do believe martial arts is a beautiful catalyst to help improve ourselves in one way, shape, or another. I think that a lot of people go in to learn martial arts because of whatever their preconceived notion is that martial arts will provide them, but they always get something supplemental. Do you feel like that will be something that would inspire other students?
I don't doubt that it will, but I also believe that what inspires students is more about the person than the physicality. Because I have students that feel, and they've told me this many times, and maybe you guys can ask them, that that they feel like they've gotten more from me in spite of my size. Now, as much as I do agree that the body, being in better shape might inspire more students to come in, might, and then especially the journey from where I am to where I'm going to be might inspire them. Hey, I think that's tops. That's cherry on the ice cream, right? But I can't do it for anybody else.
100%.
I have to do it for me. And
100%.
as much as I want to say, yeah, I'm ready to do it for everybody. No. If you are able to provide me the things that you were able to provide me, it's just going to be 100% for me.
That's awesome. I love that. And I think that that's inspiring is to show that while yes, you're talking about body positivity, the point of martial arts is improvement. And we
Mhm.
do that over a long period of time and
Absolutely.
shit, sometimes we get it when we're 80 and sometimes we get it when we're 20, you know. I got two really good questions back to back on YouTube. I'm scrolling and most of the stuff we already touched on. So if there's anybody out there like, "Oh, you didn't read my question verbatim," please watch the interview because we touched I'm positive we answered a lot of your questions, but the one that I see right now, what are the key points to make his martial art uh, as or more effective than other martial arts? So, what makes this martial art an effective martial art in your opinion?
Great question. Filipinos are generally small in stature. Don't base it on me. Don't base it on me. But they're generally small in stature. 5'2", 5'3", skinny, right? Philippines. I love my people. I love my country. Every time I go to the Philippines, everybody looks at me like, this, oh, a giant walk by, right? So, but Filipinos are generally small in stature. So we had to learn not to fight in like strength versus strength. We had to learn how to fight in lack of a better term, cheating, right? Cheating, meaning if we're not going to take 20 steps to do something, we're going to take two. We're not, if somebody's coming at me, I'm just going to pull a knife right now. People have asked me, oh, you're going to go to jail. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to get into the legalities of things. right? Go ask a lawyer, not me. They'll charge you a lot of money, but go ask a lawyer. Okay. But the point of the matter is that I think Filipino martial arts is effective because it starts you off with a weapon first, meaning we're already teaching you there's no such thing as a fair fight in a real fight. If you can pick up a stick, right, you're not going to. Why? Because of some honor code? If somebody's gonna pull a knife and you have one, I'm like, okay, now I'm gonna pull a knife. Why? Because of some honor code? If the person you're fighting was honorable, they wouldn't be fighting you. They wouldn't be trying to introduce you to Jesus right away. Right? So the whole idea here is that the mindset is starting to teach you that there's no such thing as a fair fight. Give yourself the most advantage as much as possible. If it means picking up a stick, pick up a stick. If it means pulling a knife, pull a knife. If it means using your flashlight to flash them in the eyes and then smack them around, then go do it. Because at the end of the day, the goal in martial arts, in my opinion, the goal of martial arts is to teach you how to get home to your family. And if that means I have to be a cheater to do that, at least I'm alive. At least I'm alive. So that's why I think that Filipino martial arts, just at the word go, teaching you how to fight with a weapon, which is what we call a force multiplier, is getting you in that right mindset that you there's no such thing as a fair fight.
Someone else asked, what are your expectations of your students and what skills do you want them to focus on?
That varies to student to student. Some students tell me, Chief, I want to be world champion. Okay. Chief, I just want to learn martial arts. Okay. Chief, I just want to be able to walk confidently to down the street. Okay. Right? So it varies from them to them. But the underlying goal is that I want them to feel like they're a better person, after walking through the door than they did before walking through the door. And if that means, whatever that criteria may be for them, I'm all for it. That's why, I get a lot of heat for this, that a lot of my students are in the little bit of the golden years age, right? But let's face it, a lot of our senior citizens are they're called the vulnerable because they feel like they're an easy target. And then so just because they're 70, they shouldn't learn how to defend themselves. They shouldn't learn how to fight anymore, or they shouldn't learn some a new skills that they just want to learn, right? The door is open to everybody, right? And so ultimately, what your goal is, that's my job to help you get there. Whether it be a world champion or you just want to be able to walk confidently down the street with your wife or your kids, then I will do everything in my power to make that happen.
I'm paraphrasing this last one, but it's long for no reason. What other martial arts have you done besides Filipino martial arts?
Like I said, I did a smidget of Master Defense System with Fred Mastro and Cliff Odette. Um, but mostly, yeah, 99.9% would be Filipino martial arts.
Well, that's cool, man. Well, I think we touched on just about, I mean, everybody had a full day to ask whatever they wanted to ask. And like a fine-tooth comb, even though I paraphrased and I kind of shortened certain questions, we touched on a lot.
Hmm.
I want to kind of wrap it up a little bit. I'm sure that there will be people out there who will just be mad at me for not simply
Coming
roasting you.
after me.
There are
Yeah.
plenty of people who have already done that. There are a lot of people who have already made their criticisms. They've already talked about it. Why do that again? And just be beating a dead horse for what other people's criticisms are. My only criticisms that I truly have, I think that there are some techniques that are sometimes hit or miss, but I also am looking at a lot of things from a Filipino martial arts perspective and not from a base martial art. I'm not looking at this from a boxing perspective. I'm not looking at this from a kickboxing perspective or an MMA perspective. When we're talking about street fighting, you're talking about the reality of someone could pull a knife, someone could pull a stick. That is a reality. And the reality is that is readily available for anyone to do at any time.
Hmm.
You're talking about doing that and getting to that escalation point and going, okay, we are here. A knife is involved, a stick is involved. Let's work.
Hmm.
Um, my criticism, I do believe that you could be a more effective instructor if you were in better shape. I 100% believe that in my heart, but I do not believe that your goal is to not be in shape. I
Yes.
don't believe that. I don't believe that it's fair for anybody to just be an asshole about that without going, hey, here's a solution. And
Hmm.
anybody who's not willing to provide a solution is just being a dick. And
Hmm.
like when it comes to people, you have not broken those five rules to
Hmm.
my knowledge. Now, if I found out that you did something like that, again, this would have been a much different conversation. The
Right.
criticisms that I think certain people have had, I think you've already addressed. You've talked about being willing to have a conversation about criticisms that you feel could improve you. You've
Right.
talked about your criteria for what validates a criticism. You've
Right.
talked about people can reach out to you about these criticisms, and if they are valid and coming from a good place, you have admitted before about criticisms and things that you needed to fix and improve. I know GN. I've known
Yeah.
GN for a long time. And the fact that he said something that was a criticism and you took that criticism to heart and you admitted fault, that's a huge deal as a martial arts instructor. And that's all we can do is
Yeah.
go, I fucked up. Let me fix it. And that's
Correct.
all we can do because that's what a white belt does. That's what a martial artist does. You
Right.
fuck up, you lose, you fail, you repeat, you rinse, wash, do it again, and then you go through those motions again and you just
Right.
keep fucking up until you eventually get it right. But it takes a long time sometimes to get it right. All I wanted to do here was give you an opportunity and an open platform, 100% to answer any questions that were out there. Now, it is not up to me to decide other people's points of view.
Of
I've
course.
been very direct with you. My point of view is very simple. I don't have many criticisms. Like I said, certain techniques I don't agree with. It
Right.
is what it is. That's how it goes. If you showed
Right.
out Anderson Silva, just to toss it out there,
Mhm.
could beat the shit out of me. I've met Anderson Silva many times. He is a
Right.
large man and he is one of the greatest to ever do it, right?
Right.
But he did one time get posted on my page.
Right.
Why did Anderson Silva get posted on my page? Is it because he's a shitty martial artist? No, absolutely not.
Right.
Is it because he's a terrible human being? No. As far as I can tell, seems like a really nice guy, family
Right.
guy, right? It's because he posted one technique about a knife defense that,
Uh-huh.
in my opinion, was 110% horseshit, right?
Okay.
Now, would I be like, hey, Anderson, when you want to hop on and have a conversation about that?
Yeah.
No, because he never even answered the goddamn direct message, right? You were kind enough to show me a little bit of willingness to have this conversation. You came on, you're a man of your word. Everything that I've seen and I went through was a lot of you just saying, hey, I know that this isn't all 100%. I know that I could be wrong. I am willing to be wrong. I am going live. You can talk to me. Like,
Right.
and that shows balls. And
Yeah.
while at the end of the day, no, I don't agree with everything you've ever posted or done, but nobody's going to do the same thing for anybody because that's fucking life.
Absolutely.
But what I will do is I will say, to my knowledge, you have not violated any of those five rules. To my knowledge, everyone who has spoken about you has spoken, who has met you, has spoken in high regard to who you are and your character. And I will say that the criticisms that I have had of you, you have agreed with, and you yourself are looking to make a change.
Correct.
Those are the important things. So, what I want to do now is I want to open the floor because I always do this for everybody. And I already told you at the beginning of this, right? You can say whatever it is you want to say. It's an
Right.
open forum, and that will be the last thing before we wrap it up.
Right. Um, Ultimately, like I said already, and I'll say it, because of this open forum, that if there's something you want to do, whether it be Filipino martial arts, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, Karate, Taekwondo, do it. If whatever speaks to you, do it. Because at the end of the day, you gotta love it. You gotta have a passion for it. Because these criticisms, it's not just to the guys who are online. You're gonna get it too. So if you don't have the passion and if you don't have the love for it, then it's not gonna last. So just do something that you want to do, whether it be martial arts or underwater basket weaving, whatever they may be. Just go ahead and do it. We don't listen to other people who just says you can't do it. Right? There's only one person that says that you can, and that's you. And so by all means, if there's anything that I want to take away from today's interview, is that go live the life that you want to live, regardless of anything else. Go live your life.
Well, thank you again. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, man. This was a lot of fun.
Good.
So Thank you so much.
This brings us to the question of the day, brought to you by Combat Candies. Combat Candies are delicious creatine candies. They're little gummies. You take 4 a day. It gives you 50 calories. It gives you your creatine dose. It's actually freaking delicious. They are very, very yummy. And so I'm glad I actually have them now. So thank you, Combat Candies. But you can get yours at the website right here. Use the promo code to get the discount. Thank you, Combat Candies. And just to add to that as well, Combat Candies is also the reason my Instagram page is back. So please show them some love. Grab some Combat Candies. They're delicious, good source of creatine. The question of the day is about Francis. Do you view him differently now that you've seen the interview? Did you view him negatively before and now you view him in a more positive light? Do you still view him in a negative light? What are your actual thoughts? If you didn't know who this man was, what do you think about him now? So that's my question. What do you think about Francis before you watched the video and now that you have watched the video? Be sure to answer the question in the comment sections below so that way I know that you watched the entire video, but also so we can have an open dialogue about stuff like this. As always, thank you all for the likes, comments, shares, subscriptions, and memberships. Keep the martial arts legit.
So she did a research and perused it online and found this dude said he could move shit with his mind. He called himself Seafood Paul Zimmerman. He got a dojo with a strip mall near Cinnabon. Now she spends all day trying to